Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Life with Loverly podcast. Today's episode is a fun one because I'm chatting with Austin-based healthy recipe creator, Olivia Adriance. You have probably seen some of her viral recipes on Instagram, with some of her posts accumulating nearly 20 million views. And not only are her recipes delicious, but they are also gluten-free, dairy-free, and refined sugar-free. It's hard to pack a punch of flavor and not include those ingredients, but Olivia has certainly figured it out for her community of over 1 million food lovers. In this episode, we are chatting everything from tips for the college girlies and their parents on how to start eating healthy on a budget to some of her most used kitchen essentials. This episode is so fun and informative, and I hope you walk away with some of your favorite recipes and ingredient swaps for you and your family. Be sure to check out her website to download her free guide on a full day of high-protein meals. She's making it easy on us. Here's my conversation with Olivia Adriance. Hi, friends. Welcome back to today's episode of the Life with Loverly podcast. I'm really excited to hear from today's guest. Olivia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been so excited about this.
This is going to be so great. I actually found you through my husband because he is the chef of our family. He cooks all of our dinners and all of our meals, and he will send me your recipes, and he'll be like, "Ooh, let's make this tonight. Ooh, this. And I'm like, who is this? I'm like about 2 years ago. And so we've been following along with you, and you're trying so many of your recipes. So he is like a huge fan.
Oh, I'm so honored. So most of my demographic is women.
Yeah.
And I always love when I get a DM from a dad cooking for the family.
Yeah.
It's just such an honor to me. So I love that.
Yeah. He's always, so he's really, he's a marathon runner. And so he's looking for like healthy recipes, low sugar, just, and so a lot of pretty much what you do fits that bill. So now he's like, I found somebody that creates food that has color, that is like things that I like. Let's just keep following along and making whatever she makes. So it's an honor to have you on the podcast.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me. And that is so cool that he is a runner. I have been like getting back into running after a very long hiatus. I ran cross country and track in college. And then after college, I was basically like, I'm going to do my one token marathon and then be done.
Yes.
And that's exactly what I did. But recently getting back into it. So,
well, I feel like Austin is such a like running city.
Totally. No, it's hard not to be inspired because I go on walks around the trail all the time and I see all of these runners whizzing by me and I'm like, oh, I aspire.
Well, and I feel like it's in your blood a little, like, and you did it for so long that I can only imagine you're just like, okay, like should I run with them or what's the deal?
I know, itching to get back.
Seriously. It's funny. My mom she ran track and cross country in college, and my brother is a runner. He runs for the USA Paralympic team. He's actually about to go to Paris for the Paralympics next week.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So running is been in my family and blood like forever. And then Chris was not a runner, my husband, but he played lacrosse in college and just kind of was like, I need to run. I need to like do something to lose weight, stay healthy. And so he got into running and then got into marathon running. So he's run 6 marathons. He's trying to complete this like world, of course I'm going to forget what it's called, but
isn't it 8? There's like 8 big ones or something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So they just recently added 2 more, but previously it was 6. So he's trying to like complete those first 6. And then I'm sure he'll go on to the next 2 that he has to do because he's addicted to it. And I'm just like, no one's making you run. Like no one's chasing you.
That is the thing about running. It just becomes so addictive.
Yeah.
And I remember like when I quit, it was really hard to ever think that I was getting a good workout in if I wasn't running.
Right.
It's like that is like the standard of working out now.
Yeah.
So phasing out of that was like an interesting season of life. But now I'm diving back in.
Well, and you grew up in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, man, Elizabeth was right. We do have a lot in common. My dad is from Portland, Oregon.
No way.
He grew up in Portland, lived there, and then moved to Georgia when he went to college. But yeah, that's so crazy.
Born and raised in Eugene. And
Okay.
again, another huge running
Oh
influence.
my goodness.
Like, I don't
Yes.
know if anyone escapes living in Eugene without having a serious running season.
Yeah. Well, and just having like Nike and like the university there and just everything being, so outdoors and, just working out, I feel like is very common. Even though the rain and the weather is a little crazy, but you just work through it.
I know. The people are there, they're just a different breed, and I I clearly couldn't keep up. I was like,
Yeah.
"I need sunshine." So I
Right.
first moved to San Diego,
Okay.
knowing that I needed to get away from the kind of like 8, 9 months of gray sky.
Yes.
Can be a little oppressive.
I agree.
And then we moved back actually for a short season to Eugene for like a
Okay.
year and a half right when we got married, and then realized, like, we're sunshine babies. So
Yes.
then it was Austin, Texas.
I love that. Okay, and like before you started really like getting into recipes and running your Instagram, you were an accountant?
Mhm. Quite a change of pace.
Yeah, so where did your heart for recipe creation come from?
I had always been like that little kid in the kitchen with my mom. So grew up cooking with her. That was like my favorite pastime. It was how I would come home from class in college and decompress was like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm just going to cook. It's always been really good for my mental health because it's one of few things that I feel like really makes me feel present.
Yeah.
You don't want to cut your finger off when you're cooking. So
Right.
you tend to be like very present cooking. And I also had to, feed myself on a budget in college. So I
Mhm.
wasn't going to be eating out all the time. And that's when I really like started getting creative in the kitchen, I would
Okay.
say was college time. Like, how do I feed myself affordably and healthfully, and I can do this creative thing. I can start getting the creative juices flowing. So that was when recipe development really started to kick in, I
Yeah.
guess.
So I live in a college town. I live in Athens, Georgia, where the University of Georgia is. And so right now, all of the students are like back in town. And, I'm seeing them at like the grocery store and Target. And I was at the grocery store the other day and there were two girls and they were looking at some stuff on the shelves and I could tell they were like, I don't know, like that doesn't fit in like my budget for like this grocery haul. And they were just kind of talking to themselves. And I thought it was so interesting that they were being conscious about that. But my question would be, what tips do you have for some college age girls who are, trying to eat healthy on a budget? I mean, groceries are so expensive right now. Do you have any tips that you can give? Because I have a lot of college students and their parents who are listening in that I'm sure can pass this information their way.
Well, I was actually talking to my assistant yesterday about how helpful it would be to come out with like a low to no equipment ebook for
Yeah.
exactly this demographic that they're typically cooking in. Well, for me, it was like I was in the dorm and there was a
Right.
shared communal kitchen, but no one ever really used it. And people who did use it didn't clean up after
Right.
themselves. So it was like, you're not really using it. So finding like little ways to assemble no equipment meals just in my dorm room.
Right.
And then even once you do move maybe off of campus, you're cooking in a very poorly equipped kitchen,
Mhm.
likely. I mean, that's what I was using for several years. Um, I so tips would be the frozen section is definitely your friend. Like there's
Mhm.
a lot of just pre-sliced vegetables. A lot of these vegetables in the frozen section are actually picked at peak ripeness too. So you're getting good nutritional value from frozen veggies, and then you don't have to have like the full set of knives to be
Right.
chopping them up.
Exactly.
And then a lot of them are steamed sometimes too. So you can just like reheat them up. Maybe you have a microwave. So frozen section is your friend.
Mhm.
And then ground proteins like ground chicken, ground beef, so much more affordable than the alternative. And you can get so creative with them. And they're really easy to cook. There's like the margin of error there is much more forgiving.
Right.
So yes, ground proteins, because I know it's like really important, especially with this wave of like we need to be getting our protein, everyone
Mhm.
realizing that protein is so essential, but that tends to be the most expensive thing.
Right.
So ground proteins, I love cans of tuna. That might not be everyone's
Yes.
favorite thing, but like I love some canned tuna.
Oh my goodness. I agree. I used to make tuna salad for like the kids I babysat when I was in college. And I
Oh,
would be like, this is like partly for me, but like they really loved it. And I need to actually get back into that. Thank you
get
for
back on
saying
your tuna
that.
salad
Yeah,
game.
exactly. Okay, those are great tips. I feel like even just people looking to start eating healthier that are kind of like, where can I add,
Mhm.
the frozen section, and finding some things that are easy to just reheat like that will be really great.
And I know with a lot of like, so say you're new to your health journey, it can be so overwhelming
Hmm.
to, okay, now I'm at the grocery store. I don't know what to buy. And I think my content can specifically cater to people who like they are more new to the gluten-free, dairy-free, refined sugar-free.
Hmm.
It's maybe not voluntary. Like
Right.
a lot of people aren't just like, "Oh, today I'm going to switch my diet to this." It's
Right.
like there is a catalyst for it.
Hmm.
Maybe it's medical or it's like something health related and you suddenly overnight are like, "Okay, I need to be eating this way." One tip that I have for those people is like there are such good swaps nowadays for foods that you are already consuming. It can be so overwhelming to try to find a love for brand new foods. So I'm like, just eat like the gluten and dairy free versions of those foods,
Right.
like the pizzas, the pastas. Like there are so many options nowadays that are really catered to that way of eating and make it a little bit less like overwhelming.
Totally. So, what did your initial days of content creation look like for you when you were just starting to share recipes and create recipes?
The initial days were very humbling. I'm sure you
Yep.
can relate to this too.
Yep.
Not an overnight success. And it was really hard every day to keep with the dream, keep with the
Mhm.
vision. I had to get really crystal clear about like, okay, in 5 years, will I be proud of myself and will it matter that I did all of this? Like as long as I can stand by what I'm doing,
Mhm.
prove to myself that I am someone who has persistence and isn't going to just give up in the face of fear or imposter syndrome, all of those things that we feel in the beginning. Like none of our favorite creators didn't go through that season.
Right. Right.
So, yes, very humbling in the beginning, a lot of self doubt, a lot of just every day telling myself everything you want is on the other side of fear. Like,
So
just
true.
don't let fear dictate your every move.
I think that's great advice for anybody listening in who's maybe like wanting to kick off their next dream or start, sharing on Instagram or start being a resource for whatever it is that they're passionate about. And so many times it is like, oh, there's already too many people doing that, or I'm not good enough, or truly fear is just getting in the way of you taking your steps. But I also really like how you said that like you really had to like get down with your vision and like, what am I doing here? Like thinking about the future you, thinking
Mhm.
about like, are you going to look back and be like, I was persistent. I stuck to my guns. I did everything that I like wanted to accomplish here. I think that's a really important thing to do at the beginning.
It's such a building block of self
Hmm.
confidence, too. Can I prove to myself that I am someone who perseveres through challenges, who sticks to my word? Like, I
Yeah.
had a little vision board, and when I first started, it was like January of 2021. Or was it? Yeah, I think it was 2021. And on that vision board, I had 100K. Like, oh, I'm gonna grow to 100K followers. It did not happen that year, but it did happen the following year.
Yeah.
And I think without that vision, without that like commitment to that
Hmm.
goal, I wasn't gonna have gotten there. And I heard a quote recently that you suffer more in your imagination than you do in reality. And I think that keeps a lot of people from pursuing a dream because we think about everything that people are maybe going to say about us, or we think about all of the ways that we can fail. And this
Yeah.
is still something that I think about.
Right.
And then that keeps us from ever actually executing on a vision.
Man. You guys didn't know you were going to get some like life advice, business advice. We haven't even gotten into the good stuff yet. Okay, so all of your recipes are gluten-free, dairy-free, and refined sugar-free.
Mm-hmm.
What is the inspiration behind the healthy recipes that you create?
So I first started my healthy cooking journey in order to manage my acne. From
Okay.
a really young age, I had acne prone skin. I started like all of the topicals from the age of 10. So like the first time I went on a topical medication was in fourth grade, which is like now seems wild. That's like so little.
Yeah.
And then tried everything throughout high school, eventually went on the oral antibiotics, and then birth control to manage my acne. And all of these things were blankets for the problem, like little
Right.
band-aids that covered it in a season. And then my skin would adapt to the medication and it was no longer as effective. And I kept getting put on higher doses. And at one point I was like, this just doesn't feel right. Like there's got
Right.
to be a better way to manage this. And a dermatologist had planted the seed in me in sixth grade. I remember she was like, you should keep a food log and figure out like, okay, when I'm eating this, this inflames my skin more. When you're in middle school, high school, and even college, like that can be really challenging. A lot of
Right.
times you're not controlling your meals.
Right.
So I knew that food could be a trigger for the symptoms that I was experiencing. And finally in college, I was like, okay, we're going to figure this out. I'm
Yeah.
going to start like cutting things out of my diet and just see how my skin responds. And I landed on gluten-free, dairy-free, refined sugar-free. Initially, that was like pretty much purely for the health of my skin. And then I
Mm-hmm.
noticed, oh, I can think more clearly. I have better digestion. I have more energy. So all of these things just, it was like little light bulbs going off. Like I just feel better all around when I'm eating this way. So that was the framework with which I started to create all of my recipes. And now I know that so many other people are struggling with
Yeah.
either skin related issues or the brain fog, the gut issues, all of that type of stuff, that this way of eating can really help serve.
Well, it's so interesting. I have a dietitian that I work with, and we've talked several times about how, like, food really should be used as medicine first, but like, that is not the way that the medical industry or pharmaceutical industry wants to do things or even attempts to do things. And it's so fascinating at like how many problems can be fixed if you just like pay attention to the food that you are consuming. And I think a problem today is it's so easy to get processed foods. It's so easy to go through the drive-through. We're all so busy, you know? And like that's the story we're telling ourselves, but then something is suffering, like skin problems, like gut problems, like all of these things happen and nobody thinks about like, oh, what are we putting in our body? Like what are we consuming that's maybe like adding to this problem?
It's tough when the incentives feel misaligned, like you
Right.
mentioned, like the medical community. And I definitely don't want to disparage. Um, Everyone is doing their best. We're all
Exactly.
doing our best
Right.
with the information that we have and with the way that we're educated. But it can feel frustrating that like the recommendation immediately is medication before really looking at diet and lifestyle.
Mhm.
And I feel like my like part of my mission is to be that bridge between the wellness information that we're hearing, like the podcast, the books, and then the tactical everyday, like, okay, but what actually should I be feeding myself?
Yeah.
So I feel like I live in the middle where, okay, we know all of these things that we're supposed to be doing, but how do we actually implement them into our lives? And I'm like, okay, these are the
Yeah.
recipes that you should be making.
Yeah. No, it's so great. Okay, so what does your process for recipe testing and creation look like now?
It has definitely developed over time. In the beginning, it was a lot of like, what am I making today? I'm going to post that on my Instagram. And now I feel a lot of like a very positive pressure that everything I put up on my Instagram, everything that hits my blog, everything with my stamp of approval on it has been tested and gone through iterations so that it's not I don't know. I really don't want people to have any recipe fails. I feel so bad when people spend money on ingredients and they take the time to cook something and then it doesn't turn out. And I know I've been in that position so many times in the past where I'm like, okay, we're going to thoroughly test things before they hit the page. So I'll come up, typically what happens, I'll come up with an idea. I'll get inspiration from eating out or classic recipes that I want to remake, recipes from my childhood. And then I'll come up with a recipe. I'll have my mother-in-law test it. So she has gotten brought onto our team and she is my recipe tester.
I love that.
And we have we text probably every day about recipes, but we have our weekly call where we talk about these are, the 4 recipes that we're going to test this week. So either she'll do round 1 or I'll do round 1. And then it goes through, I would say typically 3 rounds. Okay. Very rarely do I nail it on the first one. Usually there has to be little tweaks. And sometimes round 2 just involves swaps that I think people are going to be asking about. I've gotten a little bit better about knowing, okay, I'm going to be asked for this swap, so I just need to come prepared with that answer.
Yep.
And then it's ready to film. Most of the time after 3 rounds, every now and then it'll take I did a banana bread earlier this year and it took 7 rounds. And that one,
wow.
I was like, this better be good. But by the end, it was delicious.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's so fascinating, because sometimes I'm eating a recipe or trying something. I'm like, how did this person who created this come up? How did they know to put these 2 ingredients together? And I feel like there has to be so much trial and error that you go through to get it to taste the right way. And then so you can tell people this is the specifics you need to do.
I feel like it must relate so much to your assembly of an outfit. That is not my skill set. I would so love to have someone style me. And when I look at someone else that has incredible style like you, I'm like, how, it's probably so easy for them to just put together an outfit. And that's so your gifting. And I feel like that for me is how it comes out with food. I kind of understand flavor balances.
Yeah.
And
that's a great way to put it. It's so true. And it really goes to show just our God-given talents and gifts that, we have. And each of those are individual to different people. But that analogy does make a lot of sense to me.
Oh, good. Well, I love watching your styling content. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need help. So
it's so much fun. It's the same thing. I'll come into the office with the girls and they'll be like, okay, I would have never done that. How did you think to do that? And I'm like, I don't know. This just made so much sense in my head when I got this skirt and I was like, obviously that top, and that's not the way people think. And same with recipes. That's not the way that people think about it. Okay. So sometimes healthy recipes can really lack good flavor. What are some ways to boost the flavor, or what ingredients are great to pack the punch without compromising nutrition?
I think number 1 is quality of your ingredients. My husband and I took a trip to Italy that we had been planning for 4 years and finally did this last June. And I remember thinking their dishes were not complex. We spent a lot of time in coastal Italy, and it was just super fresh ingredients, delicious tomatoes, really good olive oil, quality salt, and a little bit of citrus. And it was, so I guess my number 1 is quality ingredients. And then your spice rack is your friend, well-seasoned food. I know in the beginning it can be kind of intimidating to season things. I think under seasoning is pretty common when you are first starting out cooking, because you don't want to ruin something.
Right.
And it's just kind of intimidating. And I love a good seasoning blend. There are so many now that it's this is your taco seasoning. You don't have to worry about all the specific spices that are going to go into that. But Siete makes a great taco seasoning. They have their fajita seasoning now. You can have the everyday seasoning from Trader Joe's. Those things add so much to a simple chicken breast or some veggies. So yeah, quality ingredients, your spice rack is your friend. And then some really flavorful little elements I like to add. Sun-dried tomatoes to a chicken dish. Those are little gifts from nature.
Love
love
it.
sun-dried tomatoes. Same with like a jar of roasted red peppers. Those will go really far. Add those to like a wrap or a sandwich. They're just delicious.
Yeah. And I guess like maybe not being afraid to try some of that. Because for me, I feel like I'm a plain eater. Like I feel like I like flavor and I like things, but if I'm cooking, I usually err on like the more bland side. And I a lot of times forget like I could just add something like a little bit of pepper or something to a sandwich to give it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that's something I have to think about. It doesn't just come naturally to me, or I'm just like, oh, it's fine. Like, let me just like make this simple sandwich or this simple salad. I don't need to add. But then when I have a salad that has all these like other flavors, I'm like, I need this every day.
Mm-hmm. It's the accessories of the dish.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I love that. So your husband works alongside you, as does mine. How have you guys found your groove in working together while being married?
This is such a like timely question because I'm actually putting out a newsletter this week about how Kyle and I have like how we started working together, some tips on how we have become better
Mm-hmm.
coworkers.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it was so like just the two of us. We were working on everything, touching all of the same projects. And with that, it's a beautiful time. It's a beautiful season to be building something together, but you're stepping on each other's toes quite a lot.
Yep.
And this specifically showed up for me with filming days. Like he used to be really involved in filming. He was the one behind the camera. And we just have a different approach to the creative process. So I would want to refilm the same thing multiple times and he'd be like really like rushing me through shots. And I was like, babe, you're ruining the shot. Like, so we would start to have a little bit of like an antagonistic attitude towards each other on filming days. And we realized like our marriage is the number one priority. So,
Right.
what can we do to make sure we can work well together, but bring in help so that we're not getting ourselves in these situations where, like, I feel like you're ruining my video.
Right.
So, I think the number one thing that has helped us is owning separate spheres of the business. He is
Yes.
super good at the finance. Like, he wants to do the behind the scenes, the stuff that absolutely has to happen in order to move the business forward. But I don't, A, feel like I have time for it, and B, it's not my gifting. So for him, the operations, the finance, the marketing, like he loves that stuff. And then I am then freed to do the creative, to focus on really high quality content, to
Yeah.
develop recipes, like to do the things that everyone sees and that I exclusively have to do.
Right.
And then he can focus on all the things that he is uniquely gifted at. So we've come a long way in our working relationship.
Well, and it's interesting because when you first started out, I'm sure you felt this way too, but like, you know, you're like, how, okay, I want to share this. I want to do this. This is like where we are. I need help. You're available to help. You're not doing it the way that I want, but we don't have anybody. Like I feel like there was a lot of compromising that had to happen until we got to a certain point where I was like, actually, let me hire somebody else. Like for the first like 3 or 4 years maybe 4 years I had Loverly Gray, he had a corporate job, but he was still doing all of my like back end stuff, all of my like books, all of the like, things that I had no interest in doing. But I needed help, filming and taking photos. And he was like, that is like the thing I hate the most. Like, I don't want to be part of you getting it, but I know it has to happen for you to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And so now he doesn't have to do any of that. And it's just so much like figuring out that balance, even though it's sometimes like when you're first starting, it is muddy, it is hard, but reminding yourself like we are married first. Like, and I would tell him, I'm like, if we're going to fight or get upset at each other like this, like I will stop now. Like, tell me, do I need to stop now? Cause I don't want to get to a point where this is so big. And like, you're really frustrated with me because we can't communicate properly. But yeah, it definitely, I feel like there's so many pros to working together. And then there's like a few things that you just were working through, but the pros like absolutely outweigh the cons, I think.
100%. Like, we love being on the same schedule. We
Yeah.
love getting to build a dream together.
Mm-hmm.
And we can really say now at this point that it's both of our dream.
Yeah.
In the beginning, I remember having a lot of insecurity about, okay, I've pulled him away from what he was working on. He was in real estate prior. And I, similar to you, kept giving him more and more responsibility that eventually crowded out those other responsibilities.
Right.
And I felt a little bit of insecurity in the beginning that maybe someday he's going to feel resentment, or maybe even now that resentment is starting to build where this wasn't his dream.
Mm-hmm.
And he feels like he has to now attach himself to my dream because he loves me so much. He wants to see me do well, but it's not really his interest.
Right.
And I remember being out on a Friday night. We do our like Friday date nights. And I asked him, I just put that, I was like, I just want to put it out there. It always helps when I have like a margarita and then I can talk about things. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling confident. So I asked him, I wanted to really make sure that, you know, this is something that he wanted to be working on. And he was like, oh my gosh, no, this is like totally what I want to be doing. Like, if I could choose what I was doing, this would be it. And he had had a really good mentor. Do you know Eileen Gould, Stylin' by Eileen?
Yes.
Okay, so her husband, Jeff, worked with Kyle at Kyle's previous corporate job. So he got to see the model of like Jeff left to go support Eileen's business. And they were like super good friends. So he saw what it could look like and how like Jeff coming on to support her business like totally took it to the next level. And Jeff is a whiz at like digital marketing, and it was all these things that Kyle was really interested in, and he had a little bit of a blueprint. So I think that made it easier to jump into too.
It's so true. I always will go on like brand trips or different things, and Chris will meet some of like the other husbands, and there's been a few times where they like follow up with him being like, okay, so I feel like we might be needing to like make this move soon, or, you know, is this really like, tell me the like nitty gritty, all the like dirtiness of working together. And so I think it's like really cool for him to be like, wow, like I'm able to help other people kind of see the reality of what this could look like. Cause I remember being in the trenches and not having anybody.
Totally.
So it's great.
That was one of the big things that changed for Kyle in this industry, was meeting other men who are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And two of our really good friends, Rachel DeVoe and Bridger Harlington, she has Rachel's Good Eats. He supports her business. Like, they're business partners now. They work together full time. And meeting them was like a huge moment for Kyle, where he was like, okay, I now have someone doing essentially the exact same thing, like even within the same industry, that now we can almost be like coworkers. We can like talk about the problems. We can problem solve together.
Totally.
So that was huge.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Okay, so more from a personal perspective, what does your typical day of meals and working out look like now?
Typical day in the life of eating and working out. Let's see. I have breakfast is like pretty consistent for me. I love like chicken sausages in the morning. I always like to build my breakfast around a protein source.
Okay.
So I'll do like chicken sausage, some avocado, some berries. And then lunch and dinner fluctuate. Those ones are all over the place because it's whatever I'm filming like or recipe testing that day. But I always build my meals around, okay, here's my protein, here is a source of fiber. I always try to get some greens in there, and here are some complex carbs. So I'll do like ground beef, maybe some sweet potato, like a mixed greens salad with, I love a little like Dijon vinaigrette with some honey.
So good.
And then, yeah, that's like a typical, especially if if I'm not cooking or like not testing or filming that day, which is pretty rare.
Right.
I love a little ground beef veggie mixture. And then for workouts, getting back into running. So that's been new. Getting back into
Yeah, and probably
running.
figuring out how you can like fuel your body for
Totally.
running, but consuming the food that you're eating, and which is all great for running, but
I know, but it feels like maybe I need to be nourishing differently. I need to get in the forums and start
yeah.
asking what are we eating
What
now
are
that
we?
we're
I
runners.
know.
But I love like running. I love Pilates, and I mix in weightlifting still too. I got really on my weightlifting game at the beginning of the year. I was like,
I got
I'm going to
this.
be a weightlifter. And not like a bodybuilder, but just like I'm going to be like toning up.
Yeah.
Now I do it probably 2 days a week. I just haven't found that it's my love.
Right.
It still feels like I should do this. Whereas Pilates, walks, running, I'm like, when can I go?
Right.
Like, I want to get that on my schedule. So nowadays it's 2 days of Pilates, 2 days of lifts, 1 to 2 days of running. I'm going to try to work up
right.
to
I
a
mean, you
full
got to
2.
start
You
somewhere.
got to start somewhere. This is literally like, I think we're about 3 weeks in to my running
love it.
career.
In a few months, you're going to be like, I'm running every day, and be like, yes, you go, girl.
I can do it. I told myself by my birthday in November, I'll be turning 31. I was like, I just want to run 4 miles. I just want to be like, boom, I'm going to whip out 4 miles, because we live by a trail that is like a 4-mile loop. I'm like, that's going to be my Monday morning.
Yeah. I have a friend, Alex. She lives in Austin, and she is always like doing stories on her trail runs and being like, checked off the easy 4 miles today, or like coffee after my 10-mile run. And I'm like, you're making me want to like go for a run.
She's my inspo now.
Yeah.
I need to follow her.
I know. I'll text you her information
Please
after.
do.
She's great. Yeah. Okay. So we're getting back into running. I love that. Okay. So what's been the biggest change you've made either in your diet or your lifestyle lately that's helped you feel your best aside from running?
Last year I reincorporated breakfast, and that was huge.
So were you doing like any type of fasting or something beforehand, and now you brought breakfast back?
Yes, we're campaigning for bringing breakfast back.
Yes.
I was always like a big breakfast girl up until 2019. Around the time Kyle and I started dating, he was doing keto, intermittent fasting.
Yep.
He was like really on his health grind. And I was like, I love everything about you. I'm just going to do everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
So I started, I cut out breakfast. And at first I was like, this is the worst.
Yeah.
And then after a while, I don't know, I guess I adapted, and my body was like, yeah, we can run on cortisol.
Right.
Do this.
Right.
So coupling intermittent fasting with keto, which definitely created some like disordered thinking about food, like some fear of carbs, fear of breakfast, like, oh my gosh, what if I knock my body out of autophagy? Which like it wasn't even in autophagy to begin with, because I was having like a latte in the morning,
right?
Taking myself out of autophagy anyway.
Right.
It was literally just, okay, I can't have food until noon. I was really like religious about that. And last year, I remember starting to feel just jittery in the morning. I was paying a lot more attention to how I was actually feeling. So jittery, I was having these crashes in the afternoon. I was having cravings around like 3 o'clock for something sweet. And I started doing a lot of research into hormones and started paying attention to my own body's cues too, like really tuning into what is it actually telling me, and analyzing my thinking around food too. Like, am I scared of carbs? Am I scared of breakfast? This is like, it's starting to sound a little crazy. So started bringing breakfast back in, and that was like a night and day difference. I think I was also a lot easier to work with. I should ask Kyle about this.
Right? You're like, I'm sorry for what I did when I didn't eat breakfast.
Exactly. Like just erase those years from your brain. But yeah, that has been a huge help in this season of life. And I definitely don't think, like, maybe there will be a season where I return to intermittent fasting. I have heard that like when you're no longer in your, I don't know, years of trying to create a baby, that it can be more healthy for women, as they're entering into menopause. So who knows? I could become an intermittent faster again, but just not in this season.
My mom is a big intermittent faster, and she's in her early 60s, and she's a very big like health nut, very conscious about like what she eats and supplements and all the things. But intermittent fasting for her is like something that she's been doing for the last few years and has seen like amazing results. So, that's kind of interesting because I feel like I need breakfast. Like I got to start getting the protein early, because also I'm like, how do you get the amount of protein you need in between 12 and 8? Like without just like constantly eating like chicken.
Just pounding a protein shake every 2 hours.
Right.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I was definitely struggling with that too. Like I knew that I needed to be eating more protein, and not having it at breakfast was just like, it felt like self-sabotage.
Yeah.
I feel like both keto and intermittent fasting are such incredible tools to be used, with discretion, like in certain seasons of life and for certain conditions. Like they can be incredibly impactful.
Yeah. Well, and breakfast is a great opportunity. There's so many good proteins that can happen at breakfast that, eggs, like you said, like chicken sausage, cottage cheese, there's so many things, in like throw your berries on there, like that can start you off really solid for the day.
It's such a joyful moment too. I love breakfast.
I do too. What about what are some of your favorite snacks that have protein in them?
I love meat sticks. So like any sort of, I love chomps, and there's this meat stick that's like literally marketed to children. It's the New Primal is the brand, and they have these, it's like this long. They're like little mini meat sticks. And they're like a chicken maple, there's chicken apple. I love them. I'm like, someday when we have kids, it'll make more sense why I'm just pounding these, just buying so many of them. But for now, whatever. I love my little chicken meat sticks.
I've been like thinking about seeing if I could convince my kids to try a meat stick, because I need like a little, like something for their lunchbox that is, or like at snack time, instead of like, some type of cracker or, fruit, which I think fruit is great, but I'm like, what if we got a little bit more protein in there? What could that look like? I just don't know if they would go for like a meat stick. So I need to, if there's something marketed towards kids, that might be what I need.
Might want to try these, the New Primal.
New Primal. Okay, I'm writing that down.
I'm looking forward to this season. Like I don't have children yet. I have so many memories though of like cooking with my mom, and the thought of feeding little ones is like so exciting. And I get a lot of questions from moms in my DMs about kid specific recipes. I'm like, oh, I wish I could be more of a resource for you right now. I only know what I know, which is like very limited when it comes to feeding a child. But that
would be a great, segue of your business someday.
Totally.
So one thing, just talking about how you remember cooking with your mom, I guess what would be your advice on, my husband is the primary chef, and I feel like he kind of uses that time as his like zone out time, whereas I think it would be a great time to be like, hey, like, why don't you help pour this in or help cook or help. He's very much like, no, like I got it. He's got his podcast in or whatever, cooking. And it's been a lot of time where I can be with the kids and do something with them. But I'm like, I feel like we're missing opportunities to where like they could learn about food and they would really like to cook. Do you think that it's just a good idea to kind of like just get them in the kitchen, like maybe start them slow? So like making breakfast on like a Saturday, here, you help me crack the eggs, here so they kind of like gain that desire.
I am so biased because I'm like, I love being in the kitchen. I loved that as a kid. I remember breakfast was, I think, the first meal that I really got incorporated in. And it was super simple things like just pour this milk.
Right.
And I'm going to guide you.
Right.
Pour this into the bowl. But I do have 3 siblings, and it didn't take with them like it took with me.
Okay.
So it's probably, I would imagine, a lot of individual interests, like based on the child.
Yeah.
I know for me, my mom would let us, like, a big activity on a Saturday would be, okay, we're going to like whip through a cookbook that had a lot of pictures. It was perfect for a child. We're going to go through this cookbook, and you're going to pick one thing, and we're going to go to the grocery store. We're going to spend our Saturday making that. We almost always picked this cake that had, you could like make a castle out of it had like ice cream cones. It was very kid friendly. But that was a really fun way of getting us feeling involved from the start of the process.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like, letting them pick a little recipe.
That's a great idea. And my mom loves to cook, and she cooks a lot with them. Like they will make like muffins or different like things, and they'll love that. And then I'm like, well, I wish we could do that more at home. But we were with some friends over the weekend, and I saw like one of their children came in the kitchen. They were like, I want to help. And the dad was like, okay, like here, I'm going to pour this into like the pancake mix. And I just remember being like, that was such a simple thing that I feel like I would have been like, I got it. Like, or no, like we're cooking, but I'm like, if they're interested, I want them to like come in and be part of it. So I just feel like I don't know, just starting small and like kind of seeing where their interests lie.
I think giving over that control is going to be hard for me someday, because it is like my zone out time.
Right.
And I have a hard enough time right now delegating at all. I'm so bad at it. Like every time I go home and I cook with my mom, she's like, you need to let people help you. When they come into the kitchen and they say, how can I help? You need to actually
like give them
a job.
Something.
Not be like, you can help by having a glass of champagne way over there. Like that will be helpful to me.
You can help by leaving the kitchen.
Yes, by evacuating the premises.
I know.
So we shall see. I talk about getting excited about cooking with children, but hopefully that actually comes out in being a good delegator.
I know. Well, and this is your job. I mean, like this is what you do. I totally see how it can be a little scary sounding to let a child come in, or when that does happen, because it feels like, oh gosh, you're going to mess this up. And then like, now what if, we don't have any more of that to complete this recipe for dinner tonight,
Totally.
But I feel like that's how they learn too. And I'm sure there were times when your mom felt the same way, and it was like, I feel like giving up that control is hard sometimes.
I know, it's going to be interesting.
You can do it. I know, right? We need like a support group text. Like,
yes,
having trouble giving up control, please help.
100%.
Okay, so if someone is just starting out on their health journey, which feels like a lot of people are kind of in that journey right now, what is a suggestion you would give them?
Ooh, suggestion for starting out on the health journey. I think find really good resources that align with the way that you like to eat. So we're all kind of optimizing for different things. Sometimes you can be optimizing for convenience, or affordability, or flavor, technique. Like there are all these things that we can optimize for when we're cooking or feeding our families. I like to think that I live in the Venn diagram of like flavor, ease, and health.
Okay.
Am I going to be like the absolute healthiest recipes on the planet? Like, no, I'm not soaking things for 72 hours and like churning my own butter, and like not everything is going to be homemade. But the recipes are going to be easy and they're going to be delicious. So I think figuring out like who are the resources, and thankfully like with social media and the internet now, there are so many incredible accounts that can guide you in that direction. And sometimes maybe you are optimizing for convenience and you just want to figure out, okay, what are the restaurants that I can eat at in my city that like are cooking with ingredients that are supportive to my way of eating. And then like I had talked about before with college students, I think just swaps for foods you're already eating. So like there are some incredible gluten-free pastas now.
Yeah.
Jovial is a really good brand for that. Um, and you can have your regular pasta dish, but just with a gluten-free pasta. I think
Mm-hmm.
gluten-free is like, because unfortunately they're like celiac is so prevalent and like gluten intolerance is so prevalent, companies have really found ways to create some incredible gluten-free products,
Totally.
and like a lot of restaurants supporting that. So swaps for things that you're already eating. I think like there was a huge yogurt trend last year and like in the last couple of years, and out of that came some really, really good dairy-free yogurts. Like
Mm-hmm.
Coco June and Culina are two brands that I love, and they make incredible dairy-free yogurts.
Yes.
So yeah, just looking for those swaps that are starting to become so prevalent in the stores.
I love
They'll
that.
ease the burden.
Yeah, totally. Okay, I'd love to pick your brain a little bit on some tangible takeaways for our listeners. So I have a few questions on some of like what are your favorites or what would you suggest type of things. What is your go-to recipe for date night?
Ooh, okay. I love date night. Um, Kyle loves a steak. So
Mm-hmm.
often we're just going to be doing like a steak, some dairy free mashed sweet potatoes,
Mm.
and then he makes a mean margarita. So, like a
Okay.
good classic margarita. But then another recipe, I think his favorite recipe that I make, and one that I don't know, we just like, we can't get away from it. I'm like, I will eat this every day.
Yeah.
It's chuck roast tacos. It's just like super simple tacos. They're really customizable. You can put whatever
Yeah.
toppings on them you want, but the chuck roast is like so
Mm.
unctuous and flavorful. And then it's kind of fun to have something that you're building together
Right.
for a date night. Do a little taco bar,
Yeah.
and then again a margarita, because
Why not?
why not?
Man, chuck roast, that is like, I feel like when I think of that, I just think of like packed with flavor.
Totally.
So that with tacos and like the different toppings, that sounds delicious.
And like so easy, because a chuck roast is almost impossible to mess up. It's
Mm-hmm.
such a forgiving piece of meat.
Yeah.
It also tends to be like on the more affordable side. Like if you're
Right.
buying a fillet for date night, that's going to be like way over here. And
Right.
then chuck roast is
Yeah.
like a more affordable option
Oh, that's a great. Okay, I'm storing all of these
for a little
for
date night.
later. Yes. Okay, what's your go-to recipe if you're bringing a dish to a girls' night?
I love something shareable and like vibrant for a girls' night. So I have this broccoli crunch salad with dates in it and like a gingery almond butter dressing. That
Ooh.
is so good. My mom actually last week, she has a girls' night every Thursday with her group of friends, and she was like, "Okay, what am I bringing to this week?" Because I get my text from her
Yeah.
like, "What am I bringing this week?" And I told her, "I think you should do the broccoli salad. Like it's so good. You could always add
Mm,
some chicken if you want a little protein on
yeah.
it, make it more of a main." And then a cocktail is always fun on like a little batch cocktail for a
Mm-hmm.
girls' night. I had shared this watermelon, like we made a fresh watermelon juice that
Mm.
my assistant and I were like dying over. We love this juice.
Right.
And it was just this beautiful pink, vibrant watermelon cocktail.
It's a great way to like keep like extend summer a little longer
Totally.
by drinking that right now.
Very
Mm,
refreshing.
I love that. Okay, what about your favorite appetizer?
Ooh, crispy smashed potatoes.
Oh,
I
yum.
love that with like a little, like a lemony chive dipping sauce.
Yum.
Love crispy smashed potatoes, and it's, who doesn't love potatoes? So it's
Yes.
like it's easy, it's crowd pleasing, it can be a finger food.
I love that.
Go
That
with that.
sounds really good. What is your favorite appliance in your kitchen you are consistently reaching for?
I'd probably say my Vitamix, and
Okay.
I've had a Vitamix since it was like one of the first major purchases I bought for myself,
Mm-hmm.
like right after I graduated college, because I knew I wanted, like, there's really nothing that replaces the Vitamix. It's like
Right.
such a workhorse. I've tried so many other blenders, but it is just, it's the best. So I would say, yeah, my Vitamix. I use that probably like 4 or 5 times a week.
Wow. Because you can make a lot of things in there, like not
Totally.
just, things you would use a typical blender for. But I remember when we got ours we registered for one when we got
Mhm.
married, and you can make like soups. And
Yes.
I was like, how is this going to work? But it did.
Soups and sauces. I remember making like a pumpkin soup in it once, like pumpkin carrot.
Yum.
It was so good.
Yum. I love like soups. Like fall is coming and I'm like, ooh, my soup game. Like that's where I can thrive. I
I'm
can make
so
soups.
excited. And soups are like, I don't know, they're so customizable. You can do absolutely whatever you want with them.
A little
And
underrated too. I think people
totally
forget
underrated.
about like all the good stuff you can put in soup.
I know. And like so healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see some soup content from
Yes.
you.
Okay. And then what's an appliance you invested in and you don't use as much as you thought you would?
Probably my stand mixer.
I agree.
They're
I
so
agree.
pretty. I feel like they look good on the shelf. Do I use it? No.
I know.
Like, can't tell you the last time I used it. But it's so cute.
It's beautiful and it feels like you need it. My best friend uses hers like all the time. And I never use mine. Like I've let people borrow mine. I don't even know if I've honestly ever used it.
I know.
And yeah, like it's like
And I hate buying things like that.
It's like,
That
and
just
because
sits
it's
there.
expensive. You
They
like
are
want
expensive.
you want to use it. Well, you probably don't, but
I'm
I
like,
see it and
gosh,
I'm like,
I should be using this.
right.
I feel like I cater so much of my content to like you don't need a lot of kitchen appliances. So I think part of the reason that I don't reach for that one is like
Not
I
everybody
think
has that.
not everybody has one. So yeah, I should whip that out though. This holiday season, we'll do some baking. We'll get the stand mixer out.
Get some like really good cookies. Get us that cookie recipe. That is going to be all the things. Okay, what is a recipe that you are most proud of right now?
I think as I'm thinking about like back to school time, and this one is really fresh because I just got a DM about it last night, but my ground chicken taco skillet, it's like everything you love about a taco bar, but just made in one pan. And for back to school time, I feel like that is so perfect. And it was literally a dad had sent me a DM and he was like, my 3 and 5-year-old love your taco skillet. And that just, it made my heart melt. I was like, this is so sweet. I'm obsessed. So yeah, I would say that one for just like busy weeknights. It's done in one pan. It's a crowd pleaser. I love that recipe.
Perfect. I'm going to go look that up and put that when Chris is like, what do you want for dinner this week? I'm going to be like, here's a recipe.
Perfect. Taco skillet.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, we've got one more question before we wrap up, which this has been amazing. So thank you again for joining. Okay, so I always ask on the podcast, what is an act of kindness that someone extended to you that has had a lasting impact on your life?
Circling back to like our first conversation about, content creation early days. It being very humbling and a big like identity crisis around, oh my gosh, I don't have like a real corporate job in people's eyes anymore. I was really struggling at that time to stick with my vision and to be persistent. And I remember 2 instances where people just showed me such kindness in the way that they were so generous with their words and like with believing in my dream. One of them was Kyle's boss at the time. He had like an office meeting and he was like, have you guys seen Kyle's wife's content? Like she posts really delicious recipes and like my daughters make her recipes. And at this time I probably had like 1,900 followers. This was not like a thriving community. It was basically all people that I knew personally. And he just said like, she's creating these incredible recipes. You guys all need to go follow her. And when Kyle came home and told me about that, I think it made me cry because I was like, I hadn't at that time really gotten outside justification that what I was doing could be impactful or there was a future in it. Right. And so for him to like believe in that. And then it was the same with, we had these neighbors who growing up, their daughter was a famous YouTuber. And so they came from the perspective of like, we understand internet careers, like we understand how content can take off and become something that's like very vibrant and fulfilling. And they were consistently engaging on my posts. They would comment, they would share my recipes, they would make them and post them to their stories. And this was the Dunn family. So Lisa and Dennis, if you're listening. And they would always send me encouragement, like, you are living in your gifting. You are so good at this. And I think that kindness of believing in someone's dream when it's not popular to believe in it, when they're even kind of on the fritz of believing it in themselves, that was just, it was the fuel I needed to keep going a lot of times. So I want to be that for other people when they're starting out in content creation. I want to like douse their fire with fuel and like just help them keep going, because that was really big for me.
That's a great example of how it's so easy to be kind, and it's so easy to, like, kindness is free. You know, everybody could just say one kind thing to somebody, and that could be like a life-changing conversation for them. You know?
That's so true. Yeah. All it took was, you don't have to be supporting people financially. Sometimes it's just supporting them with kindness, with a like, with a share on their post. Like if you know an aspiring content creator, just engage in their content. Make them feel like someone is out there paying any sort of attention, because I certainly didn't feel like that in the beginning.
Yeah, I know. And it feels like it's such a career that you can feel so lonely, even though you have all of these people following at times. And so words are just like that affirmation. Especially like I've have some comments that I've saved over the years that I've received that have just been like, wow, that completely changed my day because of how kind this person was. Or they sent me a picture of an outfit and they were telling me how confident they were feeling. And it validated, like, this is like, if it's only touching one person every day, like that is, it reached her, and that made me feel so good. So it's just so easy to do.
I know. I have a little folder on my phone called Sweet DMs, and I literally screenshot these like day altering DMs and just save them for when I'm not really feeling as vibrant.
Honestly, that is like one of the best tips I've ever received. So if you are a content creator or somebody out there that does get customer service type feedback, making a folder in your phone and saving that is so helpful. It's like you said, like there's times where you can go back and you get this pep back in your step, and you're like, you know what? Cheryl said that I was great at this, and I'm great at this.
Exactly. I'm changing one life right now. It's impactful.
Exactly. Well, Olivia, tell us where we can find you. I know everybody is going to run to your Instagram to check out all your amazing recipes. And if there's anywhere else you want our listeners to go, let us know where.
The two like main places you can find me are my Instagram is at olivia.adriance. And then my blog is just my name, oliviaadriance.com.
Perfect.
So yeah, that's mostly where I hang out.
Well, we'll leave all of those direct links in our show notes, but this conversation has been amazing. I am personally going to be trying a few of the recipes that we mentioned today. And just thank you so much for your time and for joining us.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. And Elizabeth was so right. We totally will be real life friends.
There's like so many other things that I'm like, wait, I know we need to about that.
Well, perfect. Thank you again.
Yes. All right, friends. Until next time.